welcome to the CNBC TV 18 special on Daan Utsav, India's own festival of giving. Celebrated each year between the 2nd and the 8th of October, this festival is aimed at promoting philanthropy in all forms. This year is even more special as Daan Utsav completes 10 years since its inception in 2009. And since then, it has inspired, encouraged and motivated millions to experience the joy of giving. Now, Edelweiss Group, through its philanthropy arm, Edelgift Foundation, is one of the many such corporates that are championing the cause of giving. So today, we will be speaking with the Chairman and CEO of Edelweiss Group, Mr. Rashesh Shah, and Vidya Shah, the head of the Edelweiss Group Foundation. Mr. and Mrs. Shah, both of you, thank you very much for joining us on CNBC TV 18. You know, it is Daan Utsav, it is the Joy of Giving week. Let me start by first asking you, what is your own approach to philanthropy? If you could tell us that.
Actually, Edelweiss has had, has channelized its philanthropy through Edelgift Foundation since 2008, so almost 10 years, and long before, the CSR Act came into being. Yeah. And an integral component of what we did was not only look for great NGO partners, but also help build their capacity and really use the strength of our employees as people who can volunteer and really build the sector, not only by providing their expertise, their talents, working specifically on projects, but also volunteering in a hands-on way in the program, whether it is sort of teaching or mentoring or like in a recent example, building a playground in Ladakh. So it can be very, very different things.
From a corporate point of view, how do you approach philanthropy? Because, what you do is also setting an example for several others out there.
Yeah, actually, in Edelweiss, one of the approach we have taken is because in the last few years, what we have seen is the concept of capitalism has changed. And we have moved away from what was called shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. And I think all of us have to be responsible, citizens, that we are not only answerable to the shareholders, we are answerable to that. Our stock price and investors and all have to get, the kind of returns they want. But you also have other stakeholders, like your employees, your customers, and the society at large. So in Edelweiss, we have always said that we need to invest back in society because they are the ones who give us the opportunity. They are the ones who provide us all the resources. So whatever we call, philanthropy or CSR, or we call it investing back in society. And our approach has been that rather than only give money, which you have to give because you want to contribute financially, but the non-financial contribution is equally important. So if you can get your employees to volunteer, if you can work with those NGOs, and NGOs can also learn a lot from the businesses on scalability, capacity building and all. So it is a win-win for everyone. In fact, it's a win-win-win because the NGOs win, the corporate and the employees win, and society wins at a large.
But, we've been having this conversation about philanthropy for the last so many years. I mean, in your experience as well, how have you seen the culture of giving evolve over all these years? I mean, are corporates really moving beyond just, that 2% of CSR, just ticking off that box? Are they really going above and beyond that?
It's starting to grow. I think the last 8-10 years is where we have seen the confidence and the surpluses have been there. Earlier, the scale in India was not there. But last 8-10 years, we are seeing more and more, not just corporate, we're seeing high net worth investors. A lot of our customers from the wealth management business, the clients on the wealth management, they also want help with their giving, with their investing, part of it. So I think the culture is growing in India. People are becoming more and more responsible, more and more sensitive to the needs to invest back in society, especially people who have been privileged. All of us have been privileged. We have got a huge amount of, upside of what has happened to India in the last 20 years. So if all of us have been beneficiaries of this India growth, it is incumbent to invest back also a little bit to make sure others can also benefit from there. So I think it is growing, and there is a overlap between personal philanthropy, corporate social responsibility, and what is now emerging as corporate philanthropy also.
But, you've also been on the ground. I mean, what sort of changes are you seeing over the years? Clearly, I mean, there's a lot more potential to give given the needs of a country like India, right?
Yeah. I think when we started, there were very, very few people, especially from the corporate world, doing philanthropy in the way that we today see it. I think spurred on by the Act, the initial response was to look at it as a compliance obligation. But I think in the last 2 or 3 years, we're seeing corporates really trying to leverage their businesses, their understanding of management practice to really bring that to the social sector and to start giving more strategically as opposed to, you know, sort of writing checks or just doing it to fulfill a compliance obligation. I think the greater momentum that we've seen in giving has actually come from private individuals, the high net worths and the super high net worths who have now begun to think extremely seriously about structuring their philanthropy.
There are so many issues that corporates are supporting. You know, they have a checkbook, they have a pool of funds, and they have various NGOs available to donate them to. You know, at a time when your attention is divided between so many causes, how do you ensure the sustainability of an issue or a project that you're supporting?
I think it starts by thinking about this as investment and not as giving. And actually in Edelweiss we don't call it giving back to society, because giving back implies you have taken something that you are giving back, but it's actually investing back. And as we all come from the investment field, when we look at investment, we want returns. Now the returns may not accrue to us, they can accrue to society at large, but it's very important to make sure the NGOs are also answerable for delivery. They are also answerable. I mean, they don't have a quarterly, you know, P&L that they have to give, but NGOs should also treat this as a resource they are using on behalf of this society, and they have to get the maximum value out of it. So I think holding NGOs accountable, teaching them how to you know, how to present their outcomes in a way that corporates can understand is very important. We have to treat this as investing. We can't treat this as giving, because giving is going to the temple and there is a dan peti out there where you just put some money and hope to get some punya out of that. This is not that. This has to be invest and ask for the returns.
No, it clearly has to be a lot more structured than that. Therefore, the question, I mean, how do you ensure sustainability of you know, these issues and these projects that you get involved in?
I think the biggest issue in India currently is actually the scale of our problems. You know, you have 243 million adolescents. You have 220 million school children. A lot of them are accessing government services. And therefore, when you look at NGOs that are trying to fill the gap between what the market is not providing and what the government is not providing, that gap is where the NGO sector really adds the greatest value. But if they can't look at it at scale, if they don't look at problem solving at scale, then, you know, we'll forever be finding NGOs and they'll forever be, you know, funding schools with 1,000 children here and there. So sustainability is key, but in our experience, and that's our way of thinking has been sort of twofold. One is a lot of our work has to be collaborative.
You've also partnered with the government of Maharashtra, with the Department of Education. You know, how has your experience of working with the government been? Because people are often apprehensive of partnering with the social, with the public body like that for fear of inefficiencies to begin with.
Yeah. No, I think it's been a very, very interesting experience. We had all the apprehensions that people usually, you know, sort of warn you about. But it's been a remarkable journey of both sides learning from each other. We actually built it in a very collaborative way. We brought funders like Tata Trusts and Great Eastern Foundation, Shipping Foundation, and a couple of other funding partners together. We had 2 implementing partners, but we kept the execution accountability at Edelgive with the government. And the government's desire was that while, you know, they have 600,000 teachers, it's probably the, you know, in Maharashtra alone, even TCS doesn't have that many employees. So you're looking at a scale which is very, very different, you know, and therefore, I think for us the experience has been that the government was as willing to learn from us as we were willing to learn about the challenges that government faces when it comes to executing at scale. So I think one of the things that we learned is that it's very important to build relationships across the board in government.
And especially to achieve scale, you're saying that the government is the best body to partner with. You know, just to close as well, I wanted to understand from you, you know, a lot of conversations are now just moving from CEOs in boardrooms to CEOs in their own lives. You know, what sort of an example would you be setting for all of your employees at Edelgive? I know You celebrate the Daan Utsav. You're one of the few corporates that do that through the week. But how are you setting an example for all your employees also to be equally active and participative in this festival?
I think our approach in anything, I mean, if you want to really make anything part of the culture, you have to talk and you have to walk the talk also, because you have to
yes,
act.
Absolutely.
You have to act and you have to talk. As long as you are consistent in what you are saying and what you continue to do, I think employees will react. We don't make it compulsory. A lot of this is voluntary, but we cheer. So we are cheerleaders, we are enablers, we do all of that. And then there is enough, internal culture that takes over and snowballs into that. So I think by last count, we are almost about 85% of the people who participate in the Edelgive activities in
all
some
voluntary.
form. All voluntary. There is no pressure. We don't want to create, upar se order aaya hai, so I have to give 1,000 rupees kind of culture, because that is very shallow.
Yeah.
But I think people should give. We do educate people on why they should give, how it is important for the society and for all of us as individuals also. And you set the example, and not just I think us as individuals, but the large part of the senior management team. They actually also they participate. They go on field trips. They work on projects and all. So as long as people see what you are doing and they hear you talk about it, most of them will also follow through on that.
Inspire by setting an example. All right, on that note, both of you, thank you very much for giving us your time. It was lovely speaking with you.
Thank you, Ritu.
Thank you. Thanks, Ritu.
All right, so that was Edelweiss Group's Rashesh and Vidya Shah on their idea of philanthropy. And on that note, we'll take a very short break, but don't go anywhere. We have another special guest coming up right after this break.